miracle really happens in community, which is, surprise, surprise, community's answer. This is, I think, a lot of why Storywork really gels with High Noon's ethos. It's not enough just to do things intellectually on your own. So the experience of taking the individual time to write your story and then to share it with a group of good listeners, and then people who can listen and keep the focus on you. People can often mean well, but totally change the conversation quickly changes how they feel about having listened to. And then people can be with that and be with you in that and maybe ask some good questions to help you clarity. And like these two elements is the magic.
Welcome back to Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate these hypersexualized times. And guess what? We have a special guest. It's somebody you might recognize. Somebody that I hope you recognize. And if you don't recognize him, well, shame on you. Just kidding. I'm not in the shaming business. I'm not going to shame anybody. His name is Sammy Uyama. Benji's brother. Just me and him. I swapped Uyamas. Don't judge me, okay? Because Sammy was the first one of us to go through something called Storywork. And it is something that we are bringing into the fold, into what we do. And so we get into what is Storywork. But more importantly, we get into the dynamic of how important it is to understand your past and how to understand your past. You know why? Because if you're in our world here in High Noon, you are working on yourself. And you cannot create a future of your dreams. Like, let's say you have a nice little vision, you have a nice North Star goal, and you want to get there, but there's something holding you back. Well, that's your past. And unless you understand it and heal it, then it will always have a grasp on you. It will always have some say as to how your future goes. And so if you want free reign of the future, you need to heal the past. And this is what we get into, because we're not asking everybody to live in the past and to obsess about it, but you do need to revisit it, relearn, and to re-educate yourself in order to heal. So we get into all this. It's a great conversation. I miss the old guy on the podcast, and I hope you do too. Please welcome Sammy Uyama, everybody. Hey, everybody. I just wanted to say that I was dusting off my old collection of people that I know, and I found a Sammy. He was just lying there waiting to be acknowledged and understood. Welcome back, Sammy, to the show.
Hello. It is fantastic to be back.
It is. We know how much somebody is like a hardcore fan by whether they recognize you from the podcast when we travel or not. Because people are always like, yeah, I know you from the podcast, to me. And then they might look at Benji and be like, you too. And then who's that tall guy beside you? But it's you. And then other people are like, hey, you're the guy that started this thing. So welcome back.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. It's quite a feeling to feel like you were at least a part of something. Like, I mean, I felt like you and I were the podcast. I mean, that's what it was. Like, we were it. That was it. So to go from that to feeling a part of something to being not recognized, right? As but that's just the natural course of time. It's like I was involved the first year, which sounds like a lot, but on paper that's like 50 episodes, and by this point the podcast is past 200 episodes, right? So that's just the natural course of things.
Actually, I've been busy while you've been away. We're on episode 1 gazillion.
Taking my nap. It's amazing how much the podcast has evolved and how much reach it's had and how it's helped people. So it's awesome to be back.
Yeah, podcasts have been around a long time, but we were there while it was still kind of like everybody was thinking I should, but not everybody did. Now, literally everybody and their grandma has a podcast. Mm-hmm. There's so many like grandma podcasts out there.
Yeah.
So, it's Sammy
demand.
has his own grandma podcast. By the way, that's what he's been working on this whole time.
That's exactly. I mean, to be honest,
knitting hourly.
That was the hook you used to get me here. Is that you were willing to throw in a pitch for my new grandma podcast. So thank you very much. That's why I'm here, everybody.
Yeah, we'll get to that. You just pace yourself, grandma. Yeah. So, Sammy's obviously, he hasn't gone anywhere. He just hasn't been on the podcast lately, but he's been the force of reason to match other people's enthusiasm and wild ideas. He always keeps us kind of on the ground. And this episode is about he helped High Noon to go into a new foray, a new kind of realm of learning and understanding. And we created even a program out of it. People are doing it. It's about story work. But, we learned about this from Gene, right? Is that how we heard about story work?
Yes, sure. I mean, like specifically, this work is very tied to, not very tied. So we've been utilizing Jay Stringer's material, right?
Yep.
His unwanted material heavily in our curriculum and our education. And
Yeah.
so it was kind of like by association. And so we didn't know it at the time. It's just, okay, we're a big fan of this work. And then learning that he was heavily influenced by this story material. And then Gene having positive things to say about it, having done the training is very helpful. So it's just kind of this reinforced association of like, okay, there's this one field where we like and it helped them. There's this other field that we trust and help them. So it's got to be something good.
By association, yeah, like the web of good ideas. Yeah, and so I want to understand story work, but I also so let's. I mean, to me, when I heard the curriculum of the taking the story work from Jay Stringer and that whole world, it was like okay, you tell your testimony and then people listen. I don't think I need to take a course for that. I think I could. I think I've done that before, right? What is the nuance of like this? Why is it so powerful? Because honestly, we've been having people. I heard a report. There's a group going through it right now, and it was a guy telling me about how the group was going, and they were all in tears. Like, wow, that I don't hear many reports about like Ascend groups or Core or Radiant where that's the case, but somehow they were going really deep. So what's the magic here of this
Right. Yeah.
idea behind
Yeah.
story?
So like on paper, it seems so simplistic, and that's definitely part of the beauty of it, is that it's not complicated. I mean, so like story work, we got to start with the context of like what it is. Is that I'd say it's at its core, it's naming and engaging the formative stories of our lives, and those often go unexamined. Right? They're often our childhood. They can be teenage years, adult years. They're definitely formative experiences throughout our whole life, and we have these moments that they formulate our view of our beliefs about ourselves, about other people, about the world. And often those go unexamined, regardless of their accuracy or not. They're just, we take them as biblical fact, and that this is just the way things are. And so actually examining those and seeing the truth of them. And so if you've even sharing your testimony to people can be a very therapeutic experience. It's very cathartic. That in itself can be very helpful. So then the being a little more refined than that would be narrowing in on like the more influential experiences. Because like a testimony, it's my interpretation of my experience of my life. Like let me highlight the moments I feel shaped me. And then story work would be looking more detailed, like only at those key moments, and examining how true is this actually. So it's like, yeah, my older brother bullied me, and that taught me to be tough, right? And I just stick up for myself. That may be someone's testimony. And story work would be, okay, so like let's re-examine that and look at that, and in that way it'd be perhaps different, where like instead of just me sharing it as that. And so story work takes, we look at these formative experiences, and particularly around wounds, shame, betrayal, maybe neglect, these very powerful emotions that we experience growing up that I believe everybody has, and naming the influence that they have on us. And that's a very important part, is that a lot of our life is unexamined. And so we just take it as it is. So just giving us a chance to relive it and to rename it, which is very scary. To relive a difficult experience is very scary. It's a very intimidating thing to do, right? But then, so it takes a lot of courage, but gives us the chance to rename it and be like, so often we need to downplay the significance of something. It's like, oh, I made this thing that happened to me into a really big deal, but actually wasn't such a big deal, right? Sometimes that's the case. A lot of the times we need to upplay things. Like this thing happened to us, and we minimize how much it really impacted us. like my dog having died when I was right. Like this is my personal example, right? This is through this work. This is one of the stories I recognize is that um, I totally unconsciously completely transformed my relationship with my concept of people's relationship with animals. I was known for like scoffing at people having again like a sentimental bond with a pet, right? Like of course pets are fun and great, but like when people would get like really sad about their animal going to their pet going to the hospital or passing away, I'd be like, oh my gosh, give me a break, right? It's like, come on. And which I still do. To be fair, like I really think some people take it way overboard. The whole baby carriage for your dog thing, or wow, okay, that's totally foreign to me. But it, I had because I experienced that as a little kid. Like I had a dog I liked a lot, and it died very suddenly. Got hit by a car, and it was very sad. And then just where it happened to be in that moment, I was with a friend of mine when I heard the news. So my friend saw me crying and like being really sad, and then he was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you're sad about your dog. Like, and you're that sad about an animal dying, right? What's wrong with you?" And then like a little kid, I felt embarrassed. It's like I didn't know what to do with that. It was just my friend who I thought was cool was calling me uncool, and so I just changed my perception of pets at the time. Like, yeah, being sad about pets is stupid, right? Only chumps do that. So
And
I share
so, can
that
I just
as an
ask,
example.
when you were you realized something about in telling this story? Like, how did you? Because okay, when you look back at memories, there's like you always remember the same, right? And so, how do
Mhm.
you realize new information, or how do you glean new wisdom from the same memories? Like, how did you realize that that had this transformative effect? This one
Right.
instance.
So this is one of the elements of story work is, so I guess the bones of story work is that it's very simple. There's a prompt of, okay, think of 3 to 5 formative experiences in your life. And we have stuff that comes up. Oh, there's the time my mom yelled at me for blah blah blah, or there's the time that I failed my math test and whatever. And then you start with just write a one liner for a few different incidents, and then you just pick one, whatever one kind of stands out, and then you expand on it and you tell that story in written form. It's really important. You just take time to put words on paper and get the story out and try to be as descriptive as possible, right? The scenery, the emotions, the dialogue, and it's difficult because a lot of these memories are very vague. But just do your best to fill in a narrative. So that's one of the bones of story work. And but doing that on its own is enough. The miracle really happens in community, which is, surprise surprise, community's answer. Ha. But like, so this is, I think, a lot of why story work really gels with High Noon's ethos is is that it's not enough just to do things intellectually on your own. So the experience of then taking the individual time to write your story and then to share it with a group of good listeners, and then people who can listen and keep the focus on you. It's people can often mean well, but totally change the beat. It change. The conversation quickly changes how they feel about having listened to what you just shared. And then people can be with that and be with you in that, and maybe ask some good questions to help you create clarity. And like these two elements is the magic. And this is where, so it sounds really simple. And I mean, no, it is very simple, but the ceiling people hit is in the quality of their listeners, I would say. And this is where like people who have experience doing story, have working people who have experience with story work or something similar, it's very helpful. Is they are good at listening for one, but then they're good at asking good questions. And so
Hmm.
I think if you just got a group of well-meaning friends, it could be a positive experience. Just your friend group would be limited in their capacity to ask good questions, possibly. Um,
Especially if you are a young man, there's you share some deep story, you'll get a lot of that's cool,
it's
man,
like
thanks
they be
for that.
doing that. It's like,
That's deep.
yeah.
Yeah, I see.
So yeah,
So the magic that really occurs, well, it's not the telling of the story. It's we remember the Cliff Notes versions of instances of our lives, right? So we, again, like I said, like the main beats, just like a song, you remember the chorus and you remember certain other parts, but the whole song,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times if I'm like, okay, whistle, some song you've heard a million times, it's actually hard because you only remember parts of it,
Right.
not the whole thing. So similar, like writing it down forces you to actually try to bridge the gaps in the memory of that instance, which is something we just don't, unless you journal, but you usually do that while it happens. We don't, like, in hindsight, recount a story in detail that occurred to us. That's one part of it, is you're unearthing a lot of these other things. They're like, oh my God, did that even happen? Right? Is this real? And then the other part is having good listeners who ask good questions. Now, can you give me an example of the difference between a good question and a bad question? Because I think a lot of people might presume that they're naturally gifted at listening and asking questions, but I think a lot of people have either overconfidence or underconfidence, but nobody has well-informed confidence in terms of like whether they're actually a good listener and ask good.
So through this process of writing a story and then sharing with people, like the wound comes often in relationship with whoever it was at that time, and so like through relationship is where healing happens, and this gives us the opportunity to re-examine the beliefs that we made. Like our whole life is a series of something happens, it gives us some kind of feeling, we make a judgment about it, and then we react. And so it becomes this habit of like this is how we operate as our life, right? Is that our reaction to stuff is based on our interpretation, our judgment of that, which is often based off of our belief about, like ourselves, that person, whatever. It's some kind of belief that our judgment comes from, and then we react to it. So the beliefs we have are really influential in our life. And so, and our beliefs come from our experiences. And the experiences that weigh the most heavily are the ones we experience as children. And so we have a lot of unexamined beliefs. And so we get a chance to re-examine those. So like, okay, oh wow, I have this belief about people I had no idea about, and it came from this incident that happened when I was a kid. And to accept that actually is not, that's not a scientific truth. It was an interpretation I had. And just that recognition can change our belief about things. Once we can change our belief, we change our whole life. We don't make the same judgments, and we don't react the same way then. It's just such a necessary element. So to answer your question about questions, like a good question asker, like keeps that in mind and is curious, and then so they're almost like an investigator. Like I think a good scientist is like a good investigator. A bad scientist starts with something to prove, right? And like they are biased, or they have an agenda, let's say. Of course, it's different than starting. Of course, you have to start with a hypothesis, right? So like, I mean, you want to test whether something's true or not. But the difference between like having an agenda about it, right? And that I'm going to prove this no matter what. Like a lawyer cares about the facts of a case, right? But they're gonna spin it very differently if they're on the prosecution or the defense, right? So that's like, so just being curious for the sake of curiosity's sake, to ask questions to learn more. So like, okay, this, what did you say? What did they say? Like, where were you guys standing? What did it, like, what was the weather like? And just really wanting to clear image of the picture. And then, and all those details re-sparks things. And then you remember particular things, and you remember feelings that you had. And so they help us gain this kind of clarity and can kind of dissect it together. A bad question asker probably would be, in general, like questions, leading questions are just always bad. It's like, so it was, you felt really angry when they said that, right? Something like that. Right? Versus like, how did it feel when they said that to you? Right? You can see the difference. And then maybe someone asks questions like already having made their judgment about this is the bad guy, this is the good guy, and just wanting to reconfirm their kind of interpretation of the story.
Hey guys, this is a quick sponsorship for our main program, Ascend. We get to do sponsorships, right? We're a nonprofit, we don't do any advertising, but our free program, Ascend, is just for you guys and gals We want to have sexual integrity. You're tired of the porn and masturbation cycle, and you want to break free from these shadows and the shame. So join us at highnoon.org to join the sexual integrity program called Ascend. We have groups, we have mentors, we have everything you need to succeed. All right? Join us at highnoon.org, and I'll see you on the inside.
Yeah. I remember attending a Q&A, church Q&A. It was, I think you went to a similar one, but it was an 8-hour. It was ugly, and there wasn't a single question. It was, let me tell you. I was like, everybody's just waiting for a question. But it's like, you know what I think about you? I was like, good Lord, I think we have to reassess what we call these things. It's not a Q&A. So yeah, the idea is that you are not inserting yourself or your opinions into the conversation when you're asking questions. You are trying to understand what it is that you're seeing. So from what I remember, there's like asking about details regarding that person's story. If somebody tells us their story, then you ask questions that help to elucidate more information, or an observation too about what you noticed. Isn't that also welcome in story work in the groups? Like, oh, when you said this, I noticed that you shuddered or you stuttered or something like that. Did you notice that? And so it's kind of an observation tied to it.
Yeah. So that ties to like good listening, right? Is
Okay.
question asking is one part, and then noticing those things. It's like, I noticed that you hesitated before saying that sentence, like, and not determining that means something, but like, at least noticing it and then asking, did that mean anything? What did it feel in that? What were you feeling in that moment? You just never know what can come up. Be like, oh yeah, it's like I was just thinking how that makes my dad look really bad, and so it kind of made me pause, and it's like, okay, why are you worried about making your dad look bad, etc.
Yeah, I like that. It seems like listening is a superpower that we all have somewhat easy access to, but kind of refuse to acknowledge or to utilize, like to really observe and absorb somebody's story, to give them the space for the story. So that's, a general note for everybody is that we're talking about story work, but this is also just about learning how to be a good listener. But the other side about storytelling that I want to unpack is, in general, there are two kind of extremes about stories, about your own money. One is that it's not that meaningful and you shouldn't acknowledge it. You should just kind of let it be. This is a more, I would say, Eastern viewpoint of like, let the past be the past and like just keep moving. Let's not dwell on that. And then the Western view is much more like, let's like obsess about the past. Let's stay in a way stuck there in trauma land. Let's understand our trauma. Gabor Mate is always like dogging on people for not being trauma informed enough. And I don't know, I feel like it's trauma obsessed. It's just like, that defines me. Do you know? And it's like, yes, we've all had trauma for sure. And when you understand what trauma means, how it impacts us, it's very good to acknowledge. I would like to know where this story work, like where it shines, and where does it fall into that spectrum of like, are you just doing this every day? Are you talking about stories every day? Or do you, after you tell a story, do you honor it and then let it go? Or what do you let it fly away like a butterfly or something?
Exactly that. You go to a nice serene cliff, and then you bring a lighter and you light it on fire and let
Burn
the
your
ashes
shirt.
float into yes. So like pendulum swings, which is just the nature of most everything is swinging from one to the end of the other, right? I would also say it's not even it's not only the East that is more like let it be. Even in the West, in America, that was the recent past, is that, let it be, let sleeping dogs lie, right? Like, no one wanted to talk about the war coming out of World War II, right? It's just like, let's just leave that be and never bring it up again. And then that had all of its consequences. And then, so even in America, in the West, it's more modern. So I'd say that one is recognizing it's important. And I think that's the nature of science, is that being willing to change your opinion and beliefs based on the best information that we have. And that's just what the latest that our observations are clearly pointing to, is that our experiences affect us greatly from our childhood, and that we experience a lot more wounding and trauma than we recognize. And that trauma, also wounding, has many forms. People think of like very dramatic things, like maybe physical abuse, sexual abuse, which, yes, but then there's also subtle forms. Neglect is like a form of wounding that many people experience that was just never named. No one even recognized it. And so it's like a very pertinent, like a part of all of our lives. And so understanding it helps. And then, and then just be staying focused on the purpose of it, understanding for what purpose, and the purpose being for us to be able to make better choices, to update our beliefs, update our behaviors, and that's the end goal. So, like dwelling on it enough to accomplish those goals, and there's many pitfalls to reflecting on the past, and a few of them. One is just obsessing over the details, right, and wanting to get all the specifics perfect. And I've got this thing happened to me, and so I've got this disorder, right, and this and diagnosing stuff. And it's like the usefulness of that, it peters off really quickly, right? It's like being informed enough to recognize that, okay, these beliefs I had, these behaviors that I had, I had those, they helped me make it to this point, and they're not helpful anymore. So let me update those. And then but not actually, and then if you're not actually changing your beliefs and your behaviors, then I mean, you're just indulging, you could say, right, on trying to create the perfect trauma story and trauma background, and just being able to explain away all the shortcomings of your life, which is not necessary. Oh yeah, one more point before it lets you jump in. The irony is that most of the most influential things in our life, we are incapable of remembering. They happened when we're 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. I mean, those when the bulk of our views of the world were formulated. And it's impossible to remember all of those conversations and all of those experiences and all of those feelings. And so it's this irony of that, this most influential time of our life, we have no capability of remembering anyway. So just to give up wanting to perfectly craft our history and just take whatever pieces that we can understand well and just use that to move forward.
Yeah. Unless you are this one lady that I know that says she remembers what it was like in the womb. She says she has a memory. There's that.
I
don't
would
know if it was
love
a
to know
traumatic
how her
memory.
marriage is doing. Right? It's
It's great.
There's a relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah.
Most people don't remember anything. I just maybe remember some toys that I got for Christmas or something. Well, I mean, I just wanted to highlight a very important distinction that you made, which is so long as it's productive and it's going to help you to look at the past, figure some stuff out in order to move with less weight and to clarify some stuff and to move forward with more direction and clarity, that's productive. To get stuck there, right? That everybody, I think, in our movement has seen that dreams may come. Can I remember the name of that movie? Because it's with Robin Williams, and his wife commits suicide, and if he goes down to save her, he might get stuck there himself. Like, that's our mind. It's very easy to get super depressed when you dwell too long in the past, right? And if you don't have a reason to go back in the past, it's probably better you just focus on the present and building the future. But it's like going to the past. Yeah, you gotta have a mission, and especially unearthing these stories. If there's pain in the past, you have to do it in a productive way, because otherwise it becomes your excuse. I know people who have had difficulty in their past, and that the only time they revisit it is to allow themselves sad for themselves, and they use it against themselves. They use their past to prevent their future rather than going back and cleaning it up. And that doesn't mean changing things, but like re-relating and in a mature way, so that but there's a time and place for that, I'm sure. Like story work, do you feel like, I'm sure there's no rules, but in your experience, would it be productive to do this continually or in waves, or like, because some people, they get into self-help, or they get into, just developing their character, their nature. And then every conversation becomes about that. And it's like, well, there's a time and place for, it's also fun to just talk about Pokemon, I'm sure, every once in a while. So like story work, how much is it kind of like a routine doctor's checkup, and how much of it is more like hiring a personal coach at the gym that every time you go there, you go hard?
I can't say that I'm qualified to fully answer, like definitively answer that question. What I can say is, I think that it's valuable for us to have a protocol. Is a good word, right? That's the hot word. And so, but like to have a protocol for our personal growth emotionally. And so, from that perspective, having a routine way of developing ourselves is very valuable. And so, story work can be that way. It can be, there's many modalities, and so story work is a modality. So in that, engaging with it regularly is very helpful. And that's different than making it your entire personality. Like the difference between doing CrossFit and being a CrossFit person. And I think another distinction about when doing something like engaging with our trauma and our wounding is helpful and when it's not helpful is doing it for the sake of me changing my actions and me changing my choices and behavior. That's productive. Versus the way I guess people get stuck, and another pitfall and people can fall into in using that kind of stuff is, oh, because of all these things that happened to me, this is why everyone else should treat me differently.
I think
And
there's
so,
a bit of that
that-
going around in the old US of A right now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm naming. I'm
Yeah.
pointing to that. Is
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
distinction of productive, not productive. It's like me
Yeah.
being responsible for these things and me doing something about it,
Mhm.
versus like victimhood. I mean, victimizing,
Yeah.
to name it, is
Sure.
because these things happen to me. You need to make accommodations for me.
Yeah, that's incredibly powerful, right? Because we're talking about people who live a life that where most of it seems to make sense, but they have an area where they just go off the rails, right? Like with porn or with some sort of weird sexual proclivities, right? That they're walking in a straight line, and then every once in a while they just like dive off a cliff, and they had no intention of doing that. It's like, what just happened? Part of that is that you have beliefs and guttural, like deep reactions to the world that were formed before you had the capacity to even understand. In order to eventually figure that out, you have to find your way back to the root, right? And that's through, I'm guessing, layers of story work. I'm guessing that this is a layered approach. It's not a panacea, like fix your life in 90 days or your money back, but it's more like a tool in your tool chest to start to trace yourself back to the root of when you went off from being a fully healthy. So would you agree that it's a great way to get back to those pivotal moments where you started making some big life choices unbeknownst, like you said, assumptions, beliefs, these kind of?
I think it's a very great access to our understanding ourselves and to like experiencing connection with people. If you want to like, oh, how can I feel a part of a community and really feel connected? Talk about these things with people. Like these are the moments that really affected us. So sharing those with people, that's a shortcut, super shortcut for I feel seen and understood by somebody else. And that's part of the magic. And that's why connection and community are so vital, is that these are like necessary things we need in our life to experience that seen, understood, accepted. It's like food, water, shelter, connection. And yeah, gosh, so just a really quick way to get to the meat of it, right? And let's cut this part out. Totally lost steam. What I was saying.
We don't edit, man. This is all going in. Well, yeah, I think we're going to be incorporating this more and more into. We have an entire story work track right now for Ascend Level 3. That's for a lot of our facilitators and people who have been around a while, because we want to give them a leg up on healing in order to help heal other people. But we also want to give them the skills to implement this in all the groups. I think this will have a trickle down effect into all of the Ascend groups, core groups, rating. But it's more kind of like the High Noon way in terms of creating programs and creating the community that you're talking about, the healing community, is like there have been some pivotal moments and figures that have added a lot of clarity. Like for me, understanding addiction, it was Gabor Mate just gave me so much. He just like really made it so clear. Like that just helped me, because up until that point, everybody else's explanation was really complicated. And this seems to be a pivotal moment. So Jay Stringer brought a lot of helpful ideas through Unwanted about the nature of why we do stuff we don't want, like, and a very much more. But now with this story work, it really seems like, you know, we're gonna have a much stronger way to, like you said, kind of fast track understanding why you do stuff and do that in community and connecting with your emotion and understanding your past. So it sounds really cool. Has your experience been 100% positive, or is there any caution that you should address doing this work?
Yeah, just really who you do it with is critical. Like,
Yeah.
often these, like, if you want to share a story about how difficult it was being bullied by your older brother, you know, the first person you share that story with probably shouldn't be your older brother. It's okay, right? Does that makes sense?
Pretty accurate.
So like who you should, like, just being, is smart about that. Also Dan Allender, just to that's the figurehead of this story work, right? We're putting some names out there, right? With Gabor Mate, Jay Stringer. So Dan Allender is the one that kind of spearheaded this story work, right? And just as a reference for people. And I think what it takes is faith, right? Like you're mentioning about how people, they use their mistakes in their past or like their shortcomings as like emotional masturbation, almost, about how, oh, I'm so flawed and I'm not enough, and I'm never going to be good enough, and they're just like they're just drawn to that space for whatever reason. And so an element of faith is very important. Faith in the, like, really the redemptive arc God shaped the world, and that's actually a thing, and then that's something for all of us to experience. And it's an incredible experience to go to feel the power of redemption, of having hit the bottom and then climbed our way back up, and not even like climb, make ever climb, but even like lifted back up, because often it's beyond what our own individual capabilities, but we're just like redeemed, you could say, to restored to like this. That's what grace is, right? We're given more than our fair due. And so the beginning of that takes a lot of faith. It's very natural and easily understandable to feel hopeless, and that what I've done is just insurmountable, unforgivable. So it takes a lot of faith, I believe, and I think it's a very necessary element, is that there is coming out of this. And like if you believe you're doomed to begin with, I mean, like, how likely is it you'll actually succeed and make it through that?
It's a great point. And that's why it's an interesting time, because the idea of faith communities, it's like becoming antiquated. Like they're shrinking in a time when we need them most, because it's about having faith, but it's also about being with other people who have faith as well. Having a common faith is a lifesaver. And so, to have people who are of the belief that we are all God's children and all deserve equal access to God's, but that we have responsibility, it's very helpful. So having High Noon groups is really a lifeline, And so again, this story work is in its purest form largely relegated to Ascend Level 3. So that's people who have been around a while. If you want to learn more about that, you could probably just ask Andreas at highnoon.org. But like I said, there will be a trickle-down effect where we're going to be obviously inheriting the essence of this and applying it to our groups more and more, just as a part of who we are. Because we have to become owners. In order to be an owner of yourself, that means to be an owner of your past, present, and future. To own your past, you have to understand your past. Through it, you have to heal it. You have to be okay with yourself, your past, and that takes some work. That's why it's called story work. It's a good name. It's kind of like like there's work, but it's just a story. So it's like storytelling. If it's storytelling
story
class,
dancing.
yeah, it's appropriate. So Yeah, cool. Do you have anything else that you feel like we left out about the power of your story? Like what can a person do when they start to go through this process? What can they feel? What you said, redemption and floating to the top. And I feel like I've heard that analogy before. It's not like climbing a mountain. It's like you're a cork that just floats back up to the surface where you're meant to be, right? So is what can people expect from doing this kind of work? Why would it be worth the effort of revisiting past wounds? And
I think because you're like, as an individual, your stories matter. They are important, and in you being like the main character of your life, playing this narrative of your life out, and so your stories are important. The harm, the beauty, all the good stuff, the longing, shame, lots of different things. They all profoundly shaped you, but they don't ultimately have to define you. So exploring them, it's worth doing for growth, and also just worth doing because they're a part of who we are. And so engaging with, I think one of our responsibilities as people, humans living in the world, is to know thyself to the best of our capabilities while we're alive, and so this is a part of who we are.
it's a great point. If imagine you got married with somebody and then they start telling you about their past, you're like, yeah, I don't want to know that part of your life. You just never talk about that part of your life. Like it's kind of like saying there's a part of you that is unlovable, and that's rough. But how many of us do that to ourselves, right? Like, yeah, I don't know about that.
Mm-hmm.
That's you're
Yeah.
kind of surgically removing a part of your life and trying to keep it in some hidden box. And the more that you do that, the more that it has power over you. So it needs to be healed. But like you were saying, Sammy, I think really, really important who you choose to reveal this stuff in front of. Yeah, we hope you can find the right people, and we hope that High Noon can be a place where most people can feel at home. So do you have any last words there, young fella? Before we
Those were my last words. Those are my last words.
Yeah,
that was
about
you
that.
asking
Do
me
you
that.
have any? You want to plug your knitting show, or do you?
Oh, right. Okay. All right, folks. The moment we've all been waiting for. Knitting with Nanny. All right. You like it? It's my new podcast. I worked on it a lot.
Scarves. He does requests. He can make voodoo dolls if you want. Yeah, it's nice to have you back, buddy. We should do like an all hands on deck, just chaotic episode with a lot of people. People never get to see. They don't get to hear your sweet caramel voice. I don't know if that's the right expression.
Velvety
But they don't get
caramel.
Yeah, but it's nice to have you back on the old show. Get a break from one Uyama, but you're never going to escape both Uyamas. It's impossible. It's too many of you guys.
Mhm.
So, yeah, nice to have you back, buddy. And I'll see you in a meeting somewhere
next time.
sometime. Hey there. I hope you enjoyed that episode. As you can tell by my face, a magical experience for myself. I hope it was magical for you. I hope you got a lot out of it. Let me invite you to the Ascend program. I want to take a little bit of time just to make sure that you understand what this thing is. You see, every few months we open up registration so that people can join our porn recovery program. If you have any issues at all with porn, even, it's just once a month, I just masturbate every once in a while, this is all an opportunity for you to figure out, why do you do these things? Why is it that you run away from yourself? Why is it that you use sex as a form of escape rather than a form of connection to God? There's so much that you can learn about yourself if you prioritize the process of learning. And that's all the Ascend program seeks to do, is to help you to understand yourself at the highest possible level regarding sexuality, about your unhealthy habits and replacing those with healthy habits so that your sexuality aligns you with God and your ideals. So please consider joining. Go to highnoon.org. It's right there at the top of our website. Register. Get yourself in the Ascend program. If you've been thinking about it, do it. If you haven't been thinking about it, do it. Just do it. Thanks so much, everybody. See you next week.